Welcome to Dhamma USA's Thursday's guest lecture series. Today we are honored to present lecture number 48. Today's topic is about body and mind integration in meditation practice. Our guest speaker today is Seiso Paul Cooper, a dedicated and esteemed figure at the convergence of Soto Zen Buddhism and psychoanalytic therapy. He is also a co-founder and former guiding teacher at Two Rivers Zen Community in Narrowsburg, New York, and Lincoln Zen Center in Lincoln, Nebraska. Seiso has been an influential figure in the realm of Zen practice. He is an award-winning author known for influential publications that bridge the gap between Zen Buddhism and psychoanalytic therapy. For more great background and info on Seiso, please visit our website at dhammausa.org. We encourage active participation from all attendees, so feel free to ask questions and share your thoughts in the comment sections. We will answer at the end of the lecture. Without further delay, I invite Honorable Seiso to begin our lecture this evening. Welcome, Seiso.
Thank you, and welcome everyone for being here for your practice and study of Buddhism. I'm going to be talking about body-mind unity from a non-dualistic perspective. And what I mean by a non-dualistic perspective is that we don't separate body and mind, which is a good example. There's many ways of thinking about non-duality, and this is one. I'd like to start by sharing a quote from Eihei Dogen, who was the 13th century founder of Zen Buddhism in Japan, from an article that he wrote in 1238 called Ika Myoju, which means one bright pearl. He writes, "Your whole body is one expression. Your whole body is a radiant light. Your whole body is mind in its totality. When it is your whole body knows no hindrances." Now notice how he emphasizes the body in that quote. And as you might know, Buddhism is one of the world's most psychological religions. But there's been a tendency, especially in the West, to mentalize or psychologize or emphasize mind in Buddhist contemplative practices in a way that ignores the physical aspect of practice. In other words, there seems to be often a preoccupation with what's going on in the mind. And this has resulted in a neglect of the physical aspect of the basic nature of the body-mind unity in many meditation strategies. Now keep in mind that the limitless, unsurpassed, most profound and perfect Dharma should become manifested through practice of our small, limited, impermanent body and mind as they operate together as one. I hope to clarify this point in what follows tonight by sharing some traditional Zen Buddhist stories and by explaining some unusual and strange uses of language. A radical non-dualistic approach to meditation practice involves the inseparability of body and mind because they function experientially together as a whole. We must keep in mind that mental functions are not part of an immaterial world standing separately over or above the concrete physical reality. Rather, the mind is fully mixed in with all aspects of bodily behavior. I'll start with some basic physical points related to sitting in the correct posture to bring this out more. Now, first of all, when we're sitting, our spine should be erect but not stiff, and our shoulders should be relaxed. Maybe you'd like to try this. So you have a nice erect posture but not stiff or rigid. Your shoulders are relaxed and comfortable but not slouched over or slumped over. And to bring a little more attention to the body, we can even rock side to side and back and forth a little bit until we find our own center balance point. The other way that we sit is with our hands. We place one palm, usually the right palm, and have the left hand resting in the right palm with the thumb tips slightly touching. Very lightly, as if you were holding a piece of paper with your thumb tips. Now, this is an important physical position. It's often called the cosmic mudra. So that's a spiritual dimension, but it also has a physical and practical dimension. Because if you find yourself pressing your thumbs together tightly, or there's a lot of pressure on your thumbs, it means you're working too hard. So it's important to go back to feeling a correct posture and starting over again. And if you find your thumbs drifting apart, that means either you're getting spaced out or lost in some thought train, or you're falling asleep. So again, you can adjust your thumbs and check your posture again. And then we sit in this posture, it's physical. Now, no matter how still you're sitting, there's movement going on. Your heart is beating. Your stomach and digestive system is working, digesting food. Your lungs are expanding and contracting because you're breathing, and you're breathing gently through the nostrils. And we keep coming back to this basic sense of the body just sitting. This is important, as I'll talk about more later. When the body is still, the mind starts to calm down and becomes very clear. When the mind starts to calm down and becomes clear, the body becomes still and relaxed also. So they both work together. So from the Zen Buddhist perspective, the body-mind continuum is one of many consistent themes that threads its way throughout its teachings. Here's an example from a writing called Senman, which means washing the face. It provides explicit instructions in terms of practice. There's a physical and spiritual unity regarding bathing in this instruction. Note that the author speaks of body-mind in a unified way. So, here's the quote. To bathe the body-mind, to apply fragrant oil, and to get rid of dust and dirt are the Buddha Dhamma of the highest priority. To put on a fresh and clean robe is a method of purification. When we bathe away dust and dirt and apply fragrant oil to the body, inside and outside will be totally clean. When inside and outside is totally clean, object and subject is pure and clean. Now, I'm going to be reading a brief verse on the activity of sitting that comes from the Chinese Buddhism, Chan Buddhism. It's a terse dialogue. But I want to, I'll share it with you in a moment in terms of Dogen's practice instructions regarding body-mind unity. But in order to understand it, it would first be useful to review the use of questions like what, where, or who in Zen teachings, because these questions express the lived, unspeakable, unspoken, ineffable reality of the moment. So questions are often turned into statements or declarations by flipping the language around or by changing the original stories, which we'll get to soon. But here's some examples. The question, what do you think about, is flipped around to, this is what you do think, or what do you understand becomes, this is what you understand. In this way, the questions become expressions of something that's unsayable, ineffable, the ultimate reality of the moment. So the meaning is radically changed. Here's an example of a dialogue, and this is the first encounter between Huineng, who was the sixth ancestor of Zen in China, and his successor, Nanyue. And it demonstrates, or is a good example of this, what we could call a linguistic somersault. Then I'll apply it to a dialogue between Weishan and a nameless monk with the intention of describing the body-mind unity with implications for meditation practice, a particular meditation practice called shikantaza, which in Japanese means just sitting or only sitting. So here's the story. When the sixth ancestor of Zen in China, Huineng, and Nanyue, who eventually became the seventh ancestor, first met, Huineng said to Nanyue, "Where did you come from?" Nanyue said, "From Mount Song." Huineng said, "What is it that thus comes?" Nanyue could not answer. After 8 years, Nanyue suddenly attained enlightenment, and he informed the sixth ancestor of this by saying, "I have an understanding." The sixth ancestor said, "What is it?" Nanyue said, "To say it's a thing misses the mark." The sixth ancestor said, "Then can it be made evident or clear or not?" Nanyue said, "I don't say that it can't be made clear, but it can't be defiled." The sixth ancestor said, "Just this that is undefiled is what is upheld and sustained by all the Buddhas. You are thus, and I am also thus." In this dialogue, what on first reading appears to be a simple question. However, when flipped around as a declaration, Huineng is saying, "This is what thus comes." In other words, Huineng and Nanyue are facing each other, and facing each other is the ineffable yet concrete reality of here and now. This dialogue can be read from a relative or everyday perspective, or from an absolute perspective. From a relative perspective, maybe Huineng is just asking a simple question or offering a greeting to Nanyue. Oh, where are you from? But then he challenges Nanyue with this statement, what is it that thus comes? Turned around as a statement rather than a question, he's saying, this is what thus comes. This is reality here and now. So, as a declaration, what serves as an expression of this that I mentioned before, unnameable, unfathomable being as it is, which is often described as thusness or suchness, and where, as a simple question or greeting, would be the way we were thinking about it in the relative sense. So when we look at the dialogue this way, we're bringing the two together. Here's another example of how Dogen modifies the original dialogue as recorded in the history of Zen to convey his non-dualism. Mazu practiced under Nanyue. He became the eighth ancestor, actually. Nanyue had enabled Mazu to intimately receive realization or enlightenment. That was the beginning of a famous story called the polishing of the tile. Now, Mazu had been practicing meditation ceaselessly for over 10 years. One time when Mazu visited Nanyue in his hermitage, Mazu stood up to receive him, and Nanyue asked, what are you doing these days? And Mazu said, lately, I do nothing but sitting. Nanyue said in Zazen, what do you aim at in sitting? And Mazu said in Zazen, I aim at becoming a Buddha. So Nanyue immediately picked up a piece of tile and began to rub it on a rock. And upon seeing this, Mazu asked, Master, what are you doing? And Nanyue said, I'm polishing a tile. Mazu said, what is polishing a tile good for? Nanyue said, polishing a tile is good for making a mirror. Mazu then said, how does polishing an old roof tile make a mirror? And Nanyue said, how does meditation make a Buddha? Now, the traditional commentaries on this story viewed the story as a criticism of meditation. In versions of the early historical Chinese text, this dialogue took place when Nanyue met Mazu for the first time. So in those versions of the story, he had no experience. But Dogen provides a unique version of the story, and in his version, at the time of this conversation, Mazu was already enlightened and had been practicing meditation for more than 10 years, as it's said in the dialogue. So the story is then interpreted not as an enlightened master examining an ignorant student's understanding, but in a way that demonstrates teacher and student as equally understanding the true meaning of meditation for our benefit as students. Now let's turn to Yueshan and a dialogue with a view that the word what operates as a statement rather than as a simple question. And that puts Yueshan and a nameless monk on equal footing. So, from this view, the dialogue functions non dualistically as a summary or condensed review of this description of Zen meditation that views the body mind non dualistically and meditation as a holistic practice that fully mobilizes the resources and the energies of both the physical and mental aspects of being. Now, before I read the dialogue, I have to explain something that Dogen's first written document when he returned to Japan from China in 1227. It's called Fukan Zazenji, and in English it means Universal Principles of Zen Buddhist Meditation. And in this regard, universal means that meditation is appropriate for everyone, not just people living in a monastery or priests or monks, but for everyone. And in this writing, it's a brief writing, he provides lots of descriptions in great detail for the environment, for the sitting cushion, for clothing, for how the body sits. And then he gives us brief dialogue, which seems to be related or translated or understood as what we're supposed to do with the mind in meditation. But we don't have to read it that way. And if we think of it in terms of body-mind unity, it'll have a very different meaning. So keep that in mind. Here's the story. Once, when the great master Huangdo of Weishan was sitting in meditation, a monk asked him, "What are you thinking of sitting there so fixedly?" So you see, there's that question that's not going to be a question. And the master answered, "I'm thinking of not thinking." The monk asked, "How do you think of not thinking?" And the master answered, "Non-thinking." So, from a dualistic perspective, this unknown monk's question, what are you thinking of? And how do you think of not thinking? Both seem legitimate enough. That is, from the relative perspective, they function as simple questions asked out of curiosity and interest regarding Zen meditation practice. Seems understandable given, as I mentioned before, the extensive and explicit details that he provided regarding the environment, attire, and body posture. So the inclusion of this brief dialogue could be perceived as a terse and enigmatic instruction, limited to how to relate to and work with mental processes during shikantaza, which, as I mentioned before, means just sitting. In this regard, the answer, thinking of not thinking by non-thinking, becomes an answer to a simple practice instruction that addresses how to relate to mental contents and processes during the practice of seated meditation. However, from this non-traditional approach to his commentaries that can completely reverse the meaning of various koans and old teaching stories, like in the tile polishing story, because he wants to emphasize non-duality. So we get a holistic and more comprehensive understanding of practice that emphasizes body-mind unity. In this way, the monk's question becomes transformed into an integral aspect of the complete and summary description of shikantaza practice. This approach to language shows how the word what can serve as a simple, concrete, and legitimate question about a situation occurring in the moment, such as in this case, Wei Shan's act of mountain still sitting. On the other hand, the monk's question becomes transformed into a statement of the ineffable, unnameable activity of meditation as the oneness of practice and realization, which reflects Dogen's view of meditation as an expression of realization, rather than as an instrument to achieve realization in the future. Now, this is an important point because meditation practices can be viewed as an instrument to get you somewhere else, or it can be used as, in this case, as an expression of where we already are. In other words, the truth and the reality of the moment. So the question, what are you doing sitting in the mountain still state, becomes, look, this is what one does. In Zazen, one sits in the mountain still state. Or perhaps we can say it more loosely. The monk is saying, look at Wei Shan, this is how you practice meditation. What becomes transformed into a statement regarding how one situates oneself, both body and mind, in the practice of shikantaza. Now, I mentioned this before, but I think it would be helpful for me to go over it again, that this turnaround from question to statement stems from the idea that the true and ultimate nature of reality is ineffable and therefore not expressible through language. So we use terms such as what and how, where, or when to express this ultimate reality. So if we apply it to the dialogue between Wei Shan and the nameless monk about thinking and not thinking, what indicates that the monk is not asking a question? Rather, he's actually expressing and pointing to shikantaza as an expression of the ineffable reality of just sitting. In this way, the complete reality of sitting equally includes body and physical posture and mind's processes as an expression of realization in the moment. So this is a very popular writing, scripture. And there's another one that Dogen followed up with to elaborate more, called The Lancet of Seated Meditation. And it's so popular, it had many, many translations. And there's one point that's consistent about the translations is the emphasis on the body. For example, the Dogen scholar He-Jin Kim translates the question as the immobile state of sitting. The Buddhist philosopher Thomas Kasulis translates it as sitting immovably about. The Buddhist scholar Stephen Hine translates it as sitting upright and steadfast. Here's a few more. Steadfast sitting, Kastanahashi. Sitting in steadfast composure, John Dido Laurie. In the still state, Nishijima and Cross. Solidly sitting as a rock, Izutsu. Sitting there all still and awesome like a mountain, Hubert Neerman. And sitting there so fixedly, Carl Bielefeld. Nothing mental about any of those translations. Now, Dogen reinforces the stillness and immovability of the physical posture repeatedly through the image of a mountain. In the Lancet of Seated Meditation that I just mentioned, in his introductory remarks, his comments that opens his commentary on the dialogue between Wei Shan and the monk, he repeatedly refers to the physical posture, still as a mountain, as an important and central aspect of meditation. Here's a quote from that writing. Having heard about this state of just sitting described by the great master Wei Shan, we need to investigate through our training what sitting as still as a mountain means and directly transmit this. For this is how the thorough exploration of sitting as still as a mountain is passed on through the words and ways of all Buddhas. Even though it is said that the way in which Buddhas think about things while being all still and awesome like a mountain differs, Wei Shan's way of putting it is certainly one way among them. As a consequence, being as still as a mountain is beyond consideration. And he goes on and repeats himself. And when he repeats himself, it's because he believes it's important. So Wei Shan is sitting fixedly as a mountain in physical stillness. He's demonstrating the continuity and integration of both physical and mental processes during meditation practice. So there's a necessity of the active participation of both body and mind. And here's why it's important. In another article on Zen meditation, he writes this. For this reason, the Buddha teaches his disciples to sit in the full lotus posture, sitting with the mind upright. Why? Because if the body is upright, the mind is easily set right. When the body sits upright, the mind is not weary, the mind is regulated, the intention is right, and the attention is bound to what is immediately present. If the mind races or becomes distracted, and if the body leans or becomes agitated, sitting upright as still as a mountain regulates them and causes them to recover. When we want to experience the absorption and want to enter the concentration, which is a Sanskrit word, samadhi, even if the mind is chasing various images and is variously distracted, sitting upright completely regulates all such states. Practicing like this, we experience and enter the samadhi that is king of samadhis. So this uh, philosophical idea of the non-duality or the unity of body and mind has very practical implications for meditation practice. I first became aware of this when I was on a retreat in Japan at Hokyoji, which is a 800-year-old Zen monastery in rural Ono, Japan. And they were giving us practice instructions based on these teachings. And the interesting thing to me about it was there were three people involved in the instructions. One was a teacher, a Zen teacher and monk, and he was giving the instructions. And another priest who was American was translating into English his instructions. And the third person was sitting in the Zazen posture, very still. And the teacher was pointing to the different aspects of the body and mind, like the hand position that I demonstrated before, and the erect posture, and shoulders, and chin, and eyes, and everything. Um, Prior to that, I had never thought about how important it is to include body and mind together when we sit. As a psychologist myself, I could say I'm one of the people that was guilty of emphasizing mind over body for many years until I started practicing this way and found the benefit. The wholeness and continuity of body and mind can be understood as a continuum in which the body functions as the obvious aspect of mind, and mind functions as the more subtle aspect of the body. And this view finds expression in actual practice, and you'll experience this if you sit and practice, that a still and relaxed body, as Dogen was describing in the Lancet of Seated Meditation, engenders a calm mind, and that a calm mind creates a still and relaxed body. As I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, in this way, the body should be relaxed, but not lax or lazy. And the posture should be firm, but not rigid. This stance and attitude can be applied to mental processes also through the notion of hishiryo, which is a Japanese term which means non-thinking, which was part of the dialogue where it said, how do you think of not thinking? And Wei Shan answered, by non-thinking. Or another translation is by leaving the thoughts alone. So it doesn't matter whether when you're practicing, if you're thinking or you're not thinking, it doesn't matter. Rather, a still as a mountain stance implies that internally we remain free from attachment, free from aversion, or free from judgment. Another way of describing that in the actual functioning of practice is free from grasping, free from pushing away, free from judgment, free from any notion of progress, any notion of goal, throughout the ongoing and continuously evolving, rising and falling of all internal processes, whether happening, whatever is happening to be going on internally, is supported and contained by the physical act of mountain still sitting. And this way, we release ourselves from any self-imposed pressure to seek an imagined goal. We just sit. And thank you. I think I'll stop here and see if we have some time for discussion, comment, questions.
Thank you, Seiso. We can wait for questions. While we wait, say so. I have a question. So I hear a lot about the term hypnotherapy. Can we say that hypnotherapy is what we apply in Buddhist meditation?
Uh, no,
Okay.
and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because in Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist meditation and practice, we're taking responsibility for ourselves,
Okay.
and that way it's referred to as an inner directed practice. Hypnotherapy puts the responsibility on the hypnotist
Okay.
and takes the responsibility away from the practitioner.
Oh, okay. But there is no good or there's no bad. There's nothing bad with it, or is
No,
there?
it's just a
Okay.
different technique.
Okay. Yeah, because I see a lot like out there, like when I Google or like YouTube guided meditation, focusing on the mind, that term hypnotherapy came up often. Like it comes up
Oh,
often. Yeah. But I don't know. That's why I'm like, I would like to know the difference, and you just explain
yeah,
it.
it's a very different system.
Yeah.
Many years ago. I studied hypnotism. I used to know how to practice it, but I realized that as I became interested in Zen Buddhism,
Uh-huh.
uh, that well, that could be say therapeutically useful for different kinds of problems that people have if the hypnotist really knows what they're doing. Uh, that it can be helpful, but it's not Buddhism.
Okay. Um, we have a question. Do you have closed eye meditation technique too?
Oh, well, that's a good question. The idea here, I actually was talking about that before the lecture with Bante a bit. Um, we have a couple of reasons for opening the eyes, for keeping the eyes open. Um, let me explain the religious principle first, and then I'll explain the practical principle. Because I think that in Buddhism, everything has a double meaning. One is a practical meaning, and one is a spiritual meaning. So the spiritual or religious meaning has to do with not excluding anything or not excluding anyone. That we're facing total reality. So by closing our eyes, we're shutting something out. You have to remember now, from a practical perspective, that we're not, in this particular method, we're not concentrating on something like a mantra or a color or a visualization. We're not doing that. We're just keeping our mind open to the reality of everything. It could be a sound in the environment, it could be a physical sensation, it could be a thought or a feeling. We're keeping open to everything. We're facing all of reality. Um, so keeping the eyes open represents that. So when we close the eyes, there's a tendency to drift off into fantasy, into sleep, into daydreams, unless you're concentrating on something like counting your breath or a mantra or something. But since we're not concentrating on anything, we uh, we have that tendency to drift off. So we need to keep our eyes open. But with that being said, there's no pressure on anyone to keep the eyes open. if you're sitting, if you notice that the eyes closed, like mine are now to demonstrate that, just notice that they're closed. Don't fight it. Don't judge it. Like I was saying before, no attachment and aversion. The eyes will open up by themselves when they're ready to. And when you're sitting with the eyes open, just notice that they're open. And we're not really concentrating on anything with our vision. We're just, if you want to practice this way, the eyes should be about a 45-degree angle to the floor. So they're sort of like half open. It's just like you're just placing them somewhere. Sometimes you'll notice that you see things and sometimes you won't because you'll be using a different form of consciousness. Maybe you'll be thinking about something. Maybe you'll be hearing something. Maybe you'll be having some sensation of the body. Maybe your knee got sore. Maybe your back hurts.
Mm.
Maybe your shoulder got a little stiff. Maybe you notice your breathing. So sometimes you notice your vision and sometimes you don't. That's how consciousness works in Buddhism. I'll give a little. I'll say a few words about the Buddhist psychology of perception to help clarify this more. You, three things need to be happening for a moment of consciousness. You have to have a sense organ of consciousness, a sense organ, so it would be the eyes, the ears, the nose, body, or the mind. Mind is a sense organ in Buddhist psychology. It just like the eyes see and the ears hear, the mind thinks. It senses thoughts and feelings. So that's a primary condition. Secondary condition is an object of attention. So maybe something that you would see with the eyes or hear with the ears. Um, and the third is the immediate previous moment of consciousness. So let me explain how this would work in actual work. Suppose you were reading a book, and suppose you had some soft music playing in the background while you were reading the book. You get really involved in the book. You won't hear the music. And then every once in a while, you notice that the music is on, right? I bet you've had that experience.
Mhm.
Now, on the other hand, suppose that attention is drawn to mind consciousness and you get preoccupied with something and you read the paragraph in the book and you realize you didn't read it. You saw the words, but they didn't register in consciousness. So you go back and read it again, same thing happens. Well, you're reading the book, you don't hear the music, you're listening to the music, you don't notice that you're reading the book. You're thinking about something that you have to do later that you're worried about, and you didn't realize that you were reading the book or listening to the music.
Mhm.
So that's how consciousness works. So to have complete consciousness of total reality, we keep our eyes open.
Yeah, I noticed too. Say so, like when I when I meditate, I like the guided meditation a little better because it keeps me like awake. If I don't like have a voice that I focus on and guide me on what I need to focus on, I tend to find myself fall asleep during meditation.
Well, as Bante was saying before, sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice.
Practice, yeah. Let's see. The next question is, in Theravada Buddhism, there are four postures to meditate: sitting, walking, standing, and laying down. How about in your system?
Oh, that's a very good connection. Before I mentioned the sixth ancestor, Huinen, and he wrote an important Chinese document called the Platform Sutra, and he says the same exact thing. And then Dogen takes that and says, don't get over attached to the form of meditation, but bring the mind of meditation to walking, standing, sitting, and laying down.
Mm.
And in this system, and I imagine in Theravada Buddhism also, those four positions, walking, standing, sitting, and laying down, represent every activity of life. Because you can't name all the activities, it would take volumes of books. So it's this a shorthand for that. That we bring the mind of meditation, that awareness, to all of our activities. So you see this same exact statement that you gave in the question in many places in the Zen literature.
The next question we have, um, in Theravada Buddhism, we have tranquility meditation and insight meditation as the two major sessions. Looks like Zen system is more into mindfulness and immersed in the body. Is that correct?
This is an important question too, because tranquility meditation, or vipassana in Sanskrit, and insight meditation. Oh, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Shamatha is tranquility, vipassana is insight. Shamatha is tranquility, and vipassana is insight. In the Shikantaza practice that I was describing before, the two are combined together. And that's why the body-mind unity is important, because if the body is still, the mind becomes clear. So that you could see the vipassana and the shamatha become integrated together. We need both because tranquility would be like the glass of a lantern. Without the glass, the flame would blow out. But without the flame, you wouldn't see anything. So we need both. But in shamatha practice, in shikantaza practice, the two are integrated together. I was emphasizing the body to make the point that the body is often neglected in meditation practice. But we keep an even we keep an even balance, an awareness of both body and mind. I hope that was clear. If it wasn't, please let me know. I'll go through it again in a different way.
So I have a question from myself. We've talked about this earlier before we start the live session. So I was invited to join a meditation class online this past Monday, and it's from one of the Buddhist temple here, and I believe it's from Tibet. And the title of the meditation is Zen meditation. And then the teacher instructed us to face the wall. Can you explain the story behind why that type of meditation is needing for us to face the wall?
Sure. That's in the Soto Zen tradition, we face the wall. But there's other Zen traditions. The other major one is the Rinzai Zen tradition. They don't face the wall at all. But the idea behind facing the wall goes back to Bodhidharma, who was an Indian Buddhist monk that traveled to China and meditated in a cave. And the story goes, we have no way of knowing if it's true or not, but his name was Bodhidharma or Daruma. And he became the first ancestor of Zen Buddhism in China in his lifetime. And that's where the Zen lineage traditionally started. But his successor was Eka, and then all the way up to Huineng, who I mentioned before, and then it kept 28 ancestors to Eihei Dogen, who brought it to Japan. But the legend was that he meditated in a cave facing a wall for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And so to honor him, we face the wall.
Gotcha.
But as I mentioned before, and I think this is important to understand, in traditional Zen Buddhist temples, there's sitting platforms that they're a couple of feet above the ground. They have platforms, and the platforms have a bamboo mat on them. And there's about 4 or 5 feet of space between the mat and the cushion and the wall. So the eyes are still at the 45-degree angle, would be seeing the floor, not the wall. But in the USA, for example, many Zen groups are in small spaces. Not everyone has a big temple. Could be in a living room in an apartment, or someone might rent out a storefront to have the meditation center. So facing the wall is not practical because it'd be in your face, and that's not good. So we face the center. The other is just, in my opinion, and not everyone agrees with this, it's just my opinion, the social aspect of Buddhism is very important in terms of the 3 treasures, the Buddha's 3 treasures, the Buddha, the Dhamma, or the teachings, and the Sangha, or the spiritual community. Now, we're not monks that are living in a monastery 24/7, where we have a lot of contact with each other. We're people living our life as householders, and maybe we get together a couple of times a week. And so having our backs to each other doesn't create much connection.
That makes sense. Thank you for explaining, but Seiso. The next question we have is, in Theravada system, there are 6 temperaments. Meditation technique is prescribed depending on individual's temperament. Do you have any such system in Zen Buddhism?
No. At least not in the Soto Zen tradition. No.
Okay.
We just sit.
Okay, this next one, I'm afraid that I'm going to pronounce it wrong. In Theravada Buddhism, we have Visuddhimagga, Patisambhidagama, Abhidhammatasangha as very helpful classical guides. Can you recommend some books to learn about Zen system?
Oh, sure. One is the Shobogenzo. Let me spell that. Shobogenzo. Shobogenzo, and that means the true Dharma eye. And it was written by Eihei Dogen over a period of about 30 years. And it has, there's a number of editions of it, but basically it has about 94 or 95 chapters, and each chapter is a teaching that helps guide us. There's also koan collections like the Blue Cliff Record, the Book of Serenity, and the Gateless Gate. There's many others, but these are the three major ones that most people use in Zen Buddhism. So they have teaching stories like the teaching story I shared with you, and commentaries that help guide us.
Okay. Um, the next question is, what is the final goal of meditation in Zen tradition?
Could I ask how you're finding the term goal?
I think this is a question from Bante. Maybe like the final purpose of the meditation in Zen, like what we're trying to achieve.
Oh, well, um, it's a couple of ways of answering it. That's why I asked how you're defining goal.
Mm.
Um, we the shikantaza practice is considered goalless, no goal. Musho toku in Japanese means no gaining mind. The sitting is already the expression of our inherent Buddha nature. So we just sit for the sake of sitting. Now, that's kind of a very subtle matter because I could say, and I know I've done this many times in my own mind, is okay, I'll just sit with no goal and then I'll get my goal.
Mm.
So it's mind can be a big trickster in that regard. But if we wanted to strike it as a goal, we could say to be aware of the true nature of reality in the present moment. What is the true nature of reality in the present moment? And the sitting practice puts us in touch with that. An idea of a goal could be an obscuration that creates a preoccupation that puts pressure on us on the one hand, and on the other hand, makes it hard to be the reality of the moment and be with that reality. So even the term shikantaza, if we break it down, shikan means to just sit. Za means meditation, and ta means hitting the bullseye, and the bullseye is the present moment. Can we hit the present moment free from preconceptions, free from desires or goals? Because even the desire for enlightenment, whatever that means, is a desire. So we make an effort to drop that.
So it's like Bante also made a comment. It's like ni and bana, which means no craving in Pali tradition.
Exactly.
Okay.
No craving. If we go to the Bhava Chakra, the wheel of life and death, at the center of the wheel, the hub, the three poisons or the three fires, we have ignorance, which means not knowing the true nature of reality. In Sanskrit, avidya, it's an act of not knowing, causes us to split subject and object, and then subject and object causes us to get caught up in attachment and aversion, which could come out in the form of aggression, hate, anger, fear. So no craving. no craving, no gaining mind. The same to me, it's the same thing. In the Pali tradition, no craving would be the same as in the Zen tradition, no gaining mind.
All right.
Now, I think we might have used up our time.
Yeah, we have, which is a perfect timing. It's been really nice to have you here, Seiso. Thank you again for accepting the invitation from Dhamma USA. We hope to see you again in the future
Oh,
to
thank
give
you.
to
Uh,
give more talks
I'm touched
because
by that. I could give a talk about that I would call "Don't be conned by enlightenment."
oh nice,
Hmm.
yeah, we
So
can.
think about that.
Sure. We can keep in touch, and I believe you have Bante's contact, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah, we have pretty much open time in December, and if we want to do it, sometimes the beginning of next year is okay too. We're pretty
Okay.
open.
Well, thank you for that, Phoebe. I'll
Yes.
contact Bronte with this title, this idea.
Sure.
Don't be conned by enlightenment.
Sure. Yeah, whatever works.
Okay.
um, yeah, so thank you again, Seiso, for the enlightening lecture and sharing your profound wisdom with us today. Thank you all, Dhamma friends, for being part of this wonderful event. We hope today's lecture has enriched your knowledge and inspired you on your journey towards inner peace and harmony. Let us continue to learn, grow, and support each other in our quest for greater understanding of the Dhamma. We have an exciting lineup of speakers and topics ahead of us, all aimed at deepening our understanding of Buddhism and its application in life. Stay connected by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Facebook and other social media platforms to stay updated on upcoming lectures. Remember, our Dhamma journey does not end here. You can explore more resources and updates on our website, dhammausa.org, or our blog at dhammausa.com. If you have any questions or inquiries, feel free to reach us at info@dhammausa.com. With that, we conclude lecture number 48 of Dhamma USA's Thursday guest lecture series. Until we meet again next Thursday, may the Dhamma guide us all towards a peaceful and happy life. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Sadhu.
Take care.
Take care.